Hello everyone and welcome back to the right seat of the 140. It's supposed to snow here next week, so why don't we turn back the hands of time to August for a quick run around the northern Connecticut River Valley. There's lots of cool flying to do up here. You have interesting terrain, simple airspace, and a smattering of little grass runways to visit. Today's home base is Post Mills. It's home to a soaring club, a hot air balloon operation, and about 10 or so airplanes, which I'm happy to say all are tail draggers. I first visited here when I was a new private pilot. I remember asking a flight instructor what I should do about takeoffs and landings. While the runway at Post Mills isn't really short at 2,900 feet long, it's surrounded by 100-foot trees on three sides, and there's a sizable hill at each end of the runway. On top of this, it's also grass. So is it a short field due to the runway length and obstructions, or is it a soft field because of the grass? My instructor told me simply, if it's short, period. Depending on the runway surface and the airport environment, pilots use different techniques to optimize the aircraft's performance. Students will be expected to know these techniques and how to use them effectively on their check ride. Of course, once you're out flying in the real world, you will have to use your judgment as pilot in command to use these techniques to ensure safety. Let's head back to Post Mills and see what these techniques are really all about. On our way, let's discuss short field landing technique. The idea here is that there's only so much runway available, and there are obstructions that prohibit us from using every inch of it. Here's a picture from the Airplane Flying Handbook. On approach, the pilot uses full flaps and glides down final at a slightly slower airspeed than usual. If the airplane isn't placarded against it, a slip can also be employed to further increase the angle of descent. Once the wheels are on the ground, the flaps are retracted to put the full weight of the airplane on the wheels, and maximum braking is applied. The objective is to get the airplane down over the obstacle and stopped in as little runway as possible. In this scenario, there probably isn't that much runway anyway. Let's see how it works. Turning base leg for runway 4, we configure the 140 for landing by approaching with full flaps, carburetor heat on, and maintaining 60 miles an hour. A normal approach would be flown at closer to 65 or 70 miles an hour. Like everything in flying, a good short field landing is always about the setup. We want to make sure that our aiming point on the runway is staying still on the windshield. If it's moving up, we're coming in too low. Downward movement indicates that we're too high. Engine power is adjusted to keep us on the appropriate approach angle. Once the obstacle is cleared, power is reduced to idle. I used a slip to increase the rate of descent, and the airplane is set down in a 3-point attitude. In a tricycle gear airplane, that just means that you come in slow with the nose high and the tail low. With the wheels down, the brakes are used as needed to stop the airplane on the remaining runway. We had plenty of that left, so I let the airplane roll out. Now that we're into our short field, let's see how we use a short field takeoff to get back out. Just like the landing, the short field takeoff is about getting off the ground using as little runway as possible and clearing the obstacle at the departure end of the runway. We use just as many tricks here. First, the pilot positions the airplane as close to the start of the runway as possible. Some airplanes require the use of flaps. Consult your POH for these settings. Aiming down the runway, the brakes are applied and the engine is run up to full power. This ensures that maximum engine power is available right from the start of the takeoff roll. I usually take a second to verify my engine gauges before starting the roll. That done, the brakes are released. The airplane is accelerated briskly and rotated to VX, best angle of climb speed. This speed is held until the obstacle is cleared. at which time the nose can be lowered for best rate of climb speed, or VY. Flaps should only be retracted once the obstacle is cleared and the airplane is at least above VX. We roll ahead just enough to line up with the runway and make sure that the tail wheel is straight. After applying full power and looking things over, the brakes are released. No flaps are used in the 140 for a short field. Cessna also didn't put a best angle of climb speed in the POH. Drawing conclusions from the 150 and other similar aircraft, I'm guessing that it's about 65 miles an hour. Climbing up initially at VX, I'm looking ahead of the airplane at the trees and the hill at the departure end of the runway. With them cleared, I lower the nose for VY. Nothing to it. Something I struggled with in training was differentiating when you needed a soft field versus a short field landing and takeoff technique, since all of the grass runways that I know are also short fields. As far as check rides are concerned, you are not constrained by runway length for the soft field takeoff or landing. Let's talk about the landing first. Imagine a runway surface that is not just grass, but mud or snow or anything that's sticky. If you stop or set the airplane down too firmly, the wheels will sink in and you'll be at least stuck, if not on your back hanging from the seatbelts. For the landing, we want to test the waters by dragging the wheels over the runway as gently as possible in slow flight. This will keep the weight of the airplane on the wings and let us see if the runway is suitable for landing. Full flaps are used and the airplane is flown in slow flight down the runway with the power on. When the mains touch, the airplane will be kept in a nose-high attitude in an effort to generate as much lift as possible. This also gives the pilot the opportunity to elect to go around if the surface is found to be too soft for landing. Once the surface has been deemed safe, power is reduced, but the nose is kept high to keep the wheels as light as possible. This attitude is held until the airplane is on solid ground. Avoid using the brakes and don't stop until you've reached that solid ground. Imagine you're trying to take off from a muddy, soft runway, an uncut grass runway, a runway covered in snow, or even a paved runway with standing water on it. The resistance from any of those things would greatly extend the takeoff roll or even make a takeoff impossible. The soft field takeoff technique uses ground effect to get the airplane into the air at a very slow airspeed, which decreases the drag on the landing gear. Ground effect happens when the airplane is flown within half a wingspan from the ground. At this low an altitude, the air trapped between the wing and the ground creates an extraordinary amount of lift. With this lift, extra induced drag extends our overall takeoff distance, but it makes a takeoff from such a surface possible. While taxiing, the pilot plans ahead to ensure that the airplane does not need to be stopped at any point on the soft surface to prevent the airplane from sinking in and becoming stuck. This means that a run-up or any pre-takeoff checks should be done on a dry or firm part of the airport beforehand. Like the short field maneuver, some manufacturers specify a flap setting for this type of takeoff. Consult the POH. The elevator is pulled full back on a tricycle gear airplane to keep some weight off of the nose wheel and prevent it from digging in. Upon reaching the end of the runway, the airplane is carefully rolled into position without stopping. Full power is applied slowly while rolling. Keep the elevator back pressure to either maintain a near 3-point attitude or to lighten the nose wheel. In a nose dragger, only raise the nose enough to lighten the nose wheel to the point where it's just off the runway. There's no reason to raise the nose any more aggressively. In a tailwheel airplane, the tail should be kept on the ground or low, but do not pin the tailwheel down so that it causes extra drag on the runway surface. At some point, the airplane will fly at a very slow speed in ground effect. Lower the nose to keep the airplane just a few feet off the ground. If the airplane climbs out of ground effect before climb speed is reached, it will settle back down and further delay the takeoff. Once you accelerate to VX, start the climb out. VX, clear the obstacle, accelerate to VY, flaps up. So there you have it. Now you know all of the tricks to get in and out of short fields and soft fields, and the differences between the two. Of course, what I just described will get you through your private pilot and commercial pilot practical tests. In the real world, you actually may need a combination of short field and soft field technique, depending on the actual runway being used. Maybe the start of the runway is firm, and that would require you to hold the brakes, while the middle part of the runway is soft, transitioning into a soft field. Careful planning and consideration is required before considering anything other than a typical paved runway. It's important to call to mind your personal capabilities as a pilot and those of your airplane. Remember to use the 5 Ps and the PAVE checklist to make sure that you're safe. Have any ideas for a new video? Leave me a comment. Thanks for watching. Blue skies, and keep the shiny side up.